Well, welcome to this discussion with these explosive events of the beginning of 2026. We are very lucky to have with us Andreas Bulov, who's both Danish and also an expert on Venezuela. His book, The Venezuelan Revolution: Eyewitness Account and Analysis, which he wrote in 2010, sets out a comprehensive view of what's happening in that nation. And he writes regularly for the Danish socialist website Solidaritet, and is active in the Hands Off Venezuela and the Red Green Alliance party in Denmark.
I mean, I lived in Venezuela for a number of years. I worked there as a revolutionary full-timer back in the Chavez period. I'm also married into a Venezuelan family, so I've been monitoring the situation quite closely. So events have really gone fast the last couple of days. I think everybody knew that something was going to happen. I've been writing a number of articles about it the last 5 or 6 months, especially since August when the imperialist you could call it a kind of a siege or an occupation of Venezuela, with all the military buildup in the Caribbean when it began. So I think all of us were prepared that something would happen, but not exactly what would happen. And I think before we go into the perspectives and also the different speculations, we have to address like the facts that we know for sure. I mean, I myself, I woke up on Saturday morning. I had a number of WhatsApp messages from different revolutionary comrades in Venezuela, in Caracas. Some of them had woken up in the middle of the night. It was around 7 a.m. here in Denmark. It was around, I think, 1:32 a.m. in Venezuela. And they had woken up because they could hear the explosions from just a couple of kilometers away at a very central airport in the middle of Caracas, which is called La Calota, which is like a presidential airport, which was being bombarded. And really rapidly, you could see all these videos in the social media of helicopters even flying around in Caracas. You had, just to give like a very brief overview of the different sites that were bombed, you had the La Calota, you had another place which is called a helicopter base in a place called Iguerote. There were a number of other places also bombed. A small airport in Charallave, and also a military base in Charallave, which is in Miranda State, just a little south of Caracas. Then you had, of course, the main bombardment was in Fuerte, which is like the main military fortress of military base of Venezuela, really, which is in the south of Caracas. And we have to understand also that Venezuela is a highly urbanized society. It's not like a place where you have a lot of people living in the countryside. So it's a country where I mean, military bases are very close to civilian residents, really. I mean, a lot of normal people live in Fuerte as well. What we know is that there were the figures, the exact figures haven't really come out. And there's also a little bit of secrecy around this. If you read the American press, they will say that it's around 40. But if you read the different people on experts on Venezuela who are Venezuelans themselves, they say it's around at least 100 dead, and a lot of injured also. I was sent by Venezuelan doctors a list of the different hospitals in Venezuela, where you could see the number of patients. Just to give an example, there was one hospital called Carlos Arvelo, which in Caracas, where you had 60 injured. Was another hospital where you had 42, and so on and so forth. So there were a number of casualties. There were also 32 Cubans who were murdered by the United States. So this was a very big, very serious attack, a large-scale attack. But we have to understand, I think, one thing which is really an unanswered question, and we can get more into this because there is a lot of conspiracy. But the reason why there are so many conspiracies is because we do not have all the information to one central fact, which is why was there no really armed resistance towards the helicopters and the American fighter jets. I mean, it's true that Venezuela is, of course, by no means a superpower, militarily speaking. It wouldn't be able to resist in the long run. However, it is true that it's really you could say suspicious to the least that there was not fired any kind of missiles or any kind of response to these, and we're talking about even about helicopters flying at a very low altitude. So, I mean, you only use this if you are more or less certain that you are not going to be hit. And I mean, even in a country like Iraq, you had much more resistance also, of course, many differences and so on. But it was really suspicious that you didn't have any resistance. And Venezuela does possess some anti-air defense system, some radar systems, and so on. And it is true that the US, to a certain extent, would be able to deactivate probably some of it with their advanced technology. And also, it is probably also true that, we know for a fact that there were a number of places in Caracas that were left without any electricity. But it is very suspicious, even in this circumstance, that there was not fired a single shot, with the exception, of course, of the Cubans and the people protecting Maduro. This was where the real fight took place. And that's why you have such a high death toll of Cubans, really, because the security guards of Maduro were mainly Cubans. Also some Venezuelans. There were, for example, a total of 15 bodyguards who were Venezuelan that were murdered also, but a lot of Cubans. And this is, I would say, quite suspicious. And there are many theories about if part of the Venezuelan army accepted, had cut a deal. And a lot of people also say that now the new president, Delcy Rodriguez, cut a deal with Americans. We do not know this. We do not know this, of course. We cannot say for sure, but I mean, we have to understand that this was a very suspicious, I think, situation, especially given the fact that yesterday in Caracas, you had in the fall of the night, you had a very tense situation, actually, because yesterday in the night there were drones flying around in Caracas, and it turned out to be actually Venezuelan military drones sent up by one part of the military. But another part of the military had not understood this, and they activated the anti-air system and began to shoot against them. This situation was resolved and coordinated in a matter of, I think, 15 minutes, 30 minutes or something like that. And then the fighting stopped. But it's just to say that they were able to activate some kind of armed response to this. Whereas in the event of the American, there was not an armed response really. And that is, I would say, pretty suspicious. Now, of course, Donald Trump is gloating. Really, he's really dizzy with success. That this was such a big success. We have to understand one thing. I think this was a success. Yes, and absolutely, it was a partial victory for the forces of U.S. imperialism, 100%. But it was not a complete victory. Because if this had been a complete victory, they would have been able to make a complete regime change. Not just a small, like palace revolution or like a coup d'etat, a small one, this probably was, but they would have been able to install the hardcore right-wing opposition. They didn't manage to do this. But they chose not to do this because they know that the balance of forces is still not completely favorable for them to do this. Of course, if we look at the aims that they have with this, I think John mentioned it very importantly in the beginning. Of course, it's about China. It's about the Chinese presence in the whole of South America. But it's also like a more general, I would say, reworking of imperialism, of US imperialism, because I mean, I think the one of the big difference between the Democrats and the Republicans in the US is that they represent different sides of the US bourgeois. Whereas the Democrats, they entered the war in Ukraine and put all the emphasis on the threat of Russia and so on. The Republicans, and especially, I mean, the Trump circle, they see China more as the big threat, and also they believe that the U.S. has abandoned its backyard. I mean, its traditional spheres of influence, which is South America. And I mean, if you read, for example, the new document that they published just like what 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, the national security document, it's very clear what they say. They say that they don't want non-continental actors on the American continent. That's China, that's Russia, that's Iran. And they say also very clearly that they want to relive the Monroe Doctrine. They want again to use different means of pressure, military and so on the whole of the South American continent. So this, of course, this is about Venezuela. It's about the oil of Venezuela, which is important, but it's also more widely about really pressurizing, putting pressure on the different other governments in Latin America to bow down, to change a lot of the different trading patterns and so on. They want to put pressure on. I mean, and Trump said it very directly. He was yesterday. He was threatening Colombia a lot, which is led by a social democratic, like very moderate left-wing man named Gustavo Petro. They were threatening Mexico with Claudia Sheinbaum, who's also a moderate, very moderate, but moderate left-wing, you could say. So this is the thing that he wants to assert U.S. power in the whole of the American continent. Now, this about Maduro in particular. Maduro was taken, in my opinion, mostly for making a big show trial in the U.S. and removing a little bit of the attention towards this. Now you see all the media putting out reports about the hearing in New York and so on and so forth. This is a big sideshow. And of course, we know all of this about them being a big drug cartel and so on. I mean, it's 100% false. I mean, it's not true that Venezuela is the main port of drugs going to the US. By no means. I mean, even the DEA says that it's mainly Colombia and Mexican cartels and so on. There are some drugs going through Venezuela, but actually, as a matter of fact, the UN reports they state that these drugs are going to Europe, so not so much to the US. So that reason is absolutely false, of course, completely false, and it's a little bit equivalent to the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that they used as a pretext. But even today, this morning, the New York Times reported that the treasury of the United States, they have removed from the indictment papers, they're removing the Cartel de los Soles, this so-called cartel which Maduro is supposed to be. They're removing it, and there's a very clear reason why they're doing it. It's because they want to work together with Delcy Rodriguez and with Padrino Lopez, who is the Minister of Defense. So, of course, they cannot say that these people are also narco terrorists. So they have to backtrack a little bit already now. So now they're going to use Maduro as a scapegoat, put all the blame on him, and then they're going to enforce by all means, both with threatening a new war, with threatening of economic sanctions, and so on and so forth. They are trying really by every means to threaten Delcy into line. And they even went on to say that they're running Venezuela now. Of course, I think that's a little bit far-fetched still. They're not running Venezuela now, but they have come quite a long way. And the latest thing is that they want to reopen already. They have plans to reopen the US embassy in Caracas, which has been closed for a couple of years. And Donald Trump today already announced a whole program of oil reconstruction in Venezuela. Of course, we know if the US embassy will reopen, I think, as there was a Venezuelan comrade who told me yesterday that if this happens, then it will be the real government in Venezuela. And I think he's correct, because they will treat Venezuela 100% as a colony. They are already, today there was another article in Politico which so-called leaked the demands that Trump has. And he has 3 or 4 demands, and he wants to see Venezuela quit a number of deals with Iran and with China, especially in the oil sector. He wants to see a lot of contracts with the US and so on. And he has even a deadline for this to happen. And so I mean, the Venezuelan government now with Delcy Rodriguez is in a situation where they are being threatened, and they're being bullied, and they can accept, or they can face, of course, this military wrath of the United States. The thing is that I mean, the big problem and the reason why this could happen is that Maduro and also the circle around him with the different factions inside them, and I'm going to stop in a couple of minutes. I'm summing up now. The reason why this could happen is, of course, like we have discussed before, is the degeneration of the Venezuelan revolution from a mass movement with a very big political participation of the working class, especially, and of the poor, This has backtracked in a number of years, or a number of years, and I would say especially since 2018, there has been a process where the Maduro government has really been dismantling all the elements of workers' power, all the elements of peasants' movement, power, and so on, and also done quite a lot of repression to the left wing. Then we had, of course, in 2024, we had the elections where there was a gigantic electoral fraud, in my opinion. I don't think that you really can doubt that. And the big problem has been that this losing of popular support over a number of years because of the rightward route of the Venezuelan government, this has meant that the big mass base that Chavez always could use to mobilize politically, this has evaporated completely. It has evaporated, and it means that it is extremely difficult today to mobilize big mass protests against imperialism. There has been some protests. We saw also in Caracas. We saw a protest. We have also seen in some countries. But the big problem is that when this has gone on for so long, and of course we also have the sanctions, which has really worsened the situation a lot. But with this situation, you had the evaporation of the mass support, and you also had another factor, which was the flower really of the revolution, the most advanced sector of activists in Venezuela. Nearly all of them went out of the country. They abandoned the country. So many good people, all of the people that I knew from my youth, I mean, they went either into exile or they had to go to a place to get work, really, because it was so difficult to live in Venezuela because of the high inflation. And this meant that really the mass support and also the advanced layer of the revolution really this all of this evaporated, and this has meant that it's tremendously difficult to build an anti-imperialist response to this, which would be the real strength that the Venezuelan government could have. And that is why you also see that the Venezuelan government now with Delcy at the head, but also still with Padrino and also Diosdado Cabello inside, who are the main figures. They have not done a really like a popular mobilization or calling on the masses and so on, or calling especially, which would be the real relevant thing to do, which would be to make an internationalist appeal to all the masses in different Latin American countries. They have not done this. They're trying now to diplomatically calm U.S. imperialism, but U.S. imperialism, it will not be calm. They will impose everything, and all of these left reformist governments that are now in place in Latin America, in Colombia, in Mexico, and so on, they will face similar problems, because they can either accept the aggressions of the US. At this point, they are not intervening in other countries, but they will intervene economically, diplomatically. They will make all this pressure and all this build up. So yeah, that's really the theme, I think. And thank you for having me.